Whoever controls your plate controls your future, it
Mm.
controls your genetic expression, control your business, it controls absolutely everything.
This is Max Rameau, strategist, theorist, author, and organizer with Pan-African Community Action, and you are listening to The Next World. On this show, we explore and celebrate the work of poor people's movements, particularly in the U.S. We highlight innovative and powerful organizing campaigns and community building led by women, LGBTQ folks, Black communities, and other people of color that are pushing the boundaries and have the potential to transform society. Today on the show, we look at the intersection where food justice meets Black liberation with two organizers who are part of the National Black Food Justice Alliance. For a little more context about the organization, here's a clip from a video from the National Black Food and Justice Alliance.
My name is Dara Cooper. I'm with the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. I am the co-founder and executive director. I got involved in food justice because years ago, as a community organizer and an activist, I'm talking to people in the community, and we are talking about what food looks like in our communities. So I remember about 15 years ago, I thought about food disparities, and I thought immediately about Jim Crow. And I thought about the drastic and the ways in which disparities that are racialized, explicitly racialized, were codified into law to say Black people were worth inferior food, housing, what have you, but we know better.
Joining us from the National Black Food and Justice Alliance is Baba Fred Carter, who works with the Black Oak Center for Sustainable Renewable Living, a 40-acre off-grid eco-campus that is engaged in a campaign against NICOR to stop the development of a pipeline and push for Renewable Pembroke. Baba Fred is the chair of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, and Mama Savi Horne is here with us, and she works with the Land Loss Prevention Project, which is a law firm and advocacy organization for farmers and land stewards, which has provided assistance and resources to those at threat of losing their land, as well as engage in the advocacy and support around debt relief for Black farmers. Mama Savi is a co-chair of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. So Baba Fred Carter and Mama Savi Horne, welcome to The Next World, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
So the National Black Food Justice Alliance, that is a mouthful and seems to bring together several different concepts at the same time. So why don't we start out by defining or talking a little bit about what food justice is and what exactly does food justice have to do with Black liberation? So we have a lot of Black liberation stuff going on right now. Why are we bringing food justice into that?
Our relationship started with injustice around food. We were enslaved because of our skills around growing food and agriculture. And how else could it start here in America? And the skill set of indigenous people in their relationship around agriculture is long and deep. So the first start is with us as a group is to address that challenge that's been with us all the time. The injustice around the land, food, enslavement of our people because of the skills that we had. Not because we were deficient, because we were masterful around plants and food and earth. So now we've lost a lot of that land. We've lost a lot of the land that we had initially before contact. I should say first contact wasn't good. And that's a major element inside the organization. So the justice part and food justice is a critical component. Feeding yourself is a critical component, right? Right now, we're in an awful place. We used to feed everyone in addition to ourselves. We're not doing that now because of the elements of inequality and justice behavior based upon a group of people who control most of the land, period.
Yes, and I mean, well said, Barbara Fred. And not much I can add, but I really feel that food justice recognizes the right of a people to self-determine what goes in their body and its effect on the body and the biosystem of where it comes from. And that if we want to be in right relationship with our surrounding, our land, that our food must at least be within that space as well. That the food that we eat should be the food that we really want to eat and not be dictated by corporatization of food as is expressed here in U.S. agriculture, and that the food that we eat is not polluting our environment and environments elsewhere. So breaking through what we now call food apartheid to get to food rights, I think that's the struggle.
So, Mama Savi, you mentioned that we should be able to consume or eat what we want. Can you give an example of what that means? Like, does that mean having either McDonald's or Burger King? Or
no, it means having the ability that our source of food must reflect culturally appropriate food. And those are not food that reflect how our families live. That was an imposed superstructure, corporate structure that pushed away local agrarian situations. And even in urban centers, we left the South, we left the islands with these culture intact. Not McDonald's, not all of those, but those now would become the dominant places where fast food would preempt our ability to consume our local food. So that's why it needs to be cast within the right to self-determine. And then that to me situated as a liberatory space that we want to be able to eat culturally appropriate food that is grown by Black farmers, BIPOC farmers in our community, that is clean, that does not destroy our local environment, impact ozone layers, doesn't travel for hundreds and thousands of miles to get to us, but a food that we can touch and feel that kind of engages all of our senses around how we eat. Because we just kind of, over time, begin to see food as just a hand shovel kind of deal where we put the food in our mouth, but we're not thinking about how it was grown, by whom, what were the recipes that our grandmothers, grandfathers, and ancestors used with this food? How does it tie us geographically to Africa, to the deep South, to the deeper South, the Caribbean? How does that all come together and help us to appreciate each other?
Yeah, the plate is the most powerful expressions of power.
Agreed.
Whoever controls your plate controls your future, it controls your genetic expression, control your business. It controls absolutely everything, because the physical plate that we consume on a day-to-day basis determine how healthy we are, how we relate to each other, the economy of our environment. And it's a place that has been, the power that has been completely taken away from us. And presently, our plate are controlled by people, an organization that has no respect for the well-being of the eater, of the planet, and the only condition that they have is profit. And the redesigning of the plate is the redesign for profit, not for health, not for clarity, not for well-being. And as a result of that, I can old enough to remember when it wasn't as bad as it is now. It also creates more hostility and violence in the people that eat that kind of food. So we think crime is just a social construct, but I'm saying we believe that it's a food construct.
Wow.
The people that put that food in our plate, if over the last 50 years, I can remember we had a local food system in the 50s. But not only that, what Mama Savi was sharing about the generational connectedness to our historical patterns of eating, even though it might have been pork, was a far healthier form of pork that exists right now. And It's been disrupted by the industrialized food system that we have no power, no real say other than somebody designing something to make us consume more of it, somebody designing and using elements that actually scientifically been proven to reduce our capacity to think with clarity, also accelerate a lot of illness. We just come through COVID. Our response from COVID has come to me from the fact that we've eaten such horrible foods over time. And the community that source us is the community that gets the worst foods on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, to me, that's a major problem. And by us not having any control or say over that, it's alarming to me because we're moving right now into a much more deeper, long food crisis. And the injustice that we're saying, since we have no control, we must absolutely have control over our genetic expression going forward by controlling our own plate. And not only the genetic expression, but our health, which is part of our genetic expression. Our health. We're running into a food crisis now. The Alliance, to me, is one of the only organization that I know of personally that has at an integrated level addressed the concern around that for our community.
I find this framing really, really interesting and really compelling. So a lot of people frame the issue of food deserts, for example, or even food apartheid as one of choice. In other words, we also want a Starbucks in our neighborhood, and we also want a McDonald's in our neighborhood. But you're framing it, the terms you use, Mama Savi, you talked about self-determination of food. And Baba Fred, you talked about food as a function of power and control instead of choice. I think this really changes the game, because then it's not about, do we also get this chain grocery store here, or do we get this chain fast food place here? It's actually about, we want control of the food system itself, which then brings the next question.
That's why I believe that within the Alliance, as part of the self-liberatory framing that we have, that, you know, we have self-determined food system as a key piece of the work that we do. And that's why we are about building community control co-ops that are linked to our farmers growing green food for our communities. And you see that happening more and more, like in Detroit, D-Town Market, now, you know, the farm, and now the move forward with a community control food co-op. I mean, those are like the building blocks. That's what we.
So, and I think those are tied to what the next question. So on the Black Food Justice Alliance website, you talk about a few things, but the two of the big concepts there are food economies and food sovereignty. What do those terms mean, and how do they relate to? So I think we're talking about food justice in one particular way. You really framed it in terms of food injustice and what needs to turn around. What are food economies and what is food sovereignty?
Well, food economy in our framework is to build a network of self-determined food economies, meaning localized within the community, owned and controlled by Black farmers and other people of color farmers within that local community, in which they grow food that is what the community deems as what they want to eat. And that a food economy is so local and regional that you're not shipping in food from California to Southwest Georgia when the climate can support better agriculture than what you would get out in California. So for us, we just really want to localize the food where people are at, and that they have a right to determine what kind of vegetables, fruits, what kind of meat they want to grow, free range, and going and seeing that as part of linking us back in our roots, in our agrarian roots, is when we saw the ownership of a pig and a small garden to feed our family as an act of liberation, and not a corporate controlled, high intensity feedlot operation of farm animals. but one that is owned by those within the community and grown in a way that does not impact the immediate environment to the extent that it pollutes water and air.
Absolutely. When you talk about food, we're committed to the economy of food too. Once we did a survey here in around Chicago for Congressman Kelly addressing food deserts. And we looked at the money that was being spent on food just based on consumption alone was $1.2 billion. And then we said that, wow, if we just redistributed just from what we put in our mouths on a day-to-day basis, 5 to 10% of that would actually transform and liberate economically those communities that's consuming on a day-to-day basis billions of dollars of food but have no engagement in the economy of it. And those communities that not economically in sustainable spaces at all, but we consume trillions of dollars of food. And because of the disconnecting of our relationship to that prior to segregation, prior to what we call integration right now, we were actually integrated out of the food business. We used to feed ourselves, which allow us to be more resilient and sustainable. So at the Alliance, our commitment is actually to be self-sustaining and sovereign. And what I mean by sovereignty is that we actually control our inputs to the point to where we can have a safe and sovereign, healthy system that we feed ourselves from. Healthy not only in terms of our physical health, but the economy of it also, not just consumers of an external system that's not committed to our well-being. But that's not just exclusive to us, but it's a whole system that's everywhere. I was in West Africa sometime in the past in Ghana, and the farmers there was telling us about the seeds that they were getting didn't reproduce. I said, my God. Me and my wife looked at each other. That sounds like Monsanto.
Monsanto Company is one of the largest agricultural companies in the world. It is big agro. It was founded in 1901 and was headquartered in the state of Missouri. In 1987, Monsanto began testing genetically modified crops. Genetically modified crops did all kinds of different things, including bigger crops and growing crops where normally one would not be able to grow crops. However, one of the outcomes was developing a seed that created crops that could not produce additional seeds. If you think about the human history, the way that humans grew food was by taking a seed from a fruit or a vegetable and then replanting that seed and growing more fruits and vegetables from that seed. Monsanto was able to create a seed that grew the fruits and vegetables, but the fruits and vegetables either did not have any seeds or the seeds that they have would not produce new fruits and vegetables. This means that instead of buying some seeds and then using those seeds to plant forevermore, you had to buy the seeds every single year from Monsanto. There are concerns that these genetically modified crops would ultimately be bad for human consumption, even though studies have not yet proven that.
So the government itself
Yes.
was aligned with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, right?
That's right.
And I was so ignorant at the time. I didn't realize, I said, by God, you guys are really messed up here. This is really messed up. I didn't know it was a global system. I didn't know that Ghana, they couldn't eat their local produce. They had to do this export thing, commoditizing of food. Grape, cashews, they couldn't eat their local food. They had to wait to the system import the consumption of food, and they export what they grow, and they can't eat it themselves. I said, this is really messed up, right? But that's a global system. It's happening here in the state of Illinois. In Illinois, I didn't know it at the time. We're in the same program.
That's right.
It's an apartheid with on everybody. We're in the same program. 99% of what we consume in Illinois is imported in. All we got here, and this is called the farm belt of the world. This is the agriculture belt, but they're only talking about soybeans and corn. What we consume mostly, even the meats, are imported in. So we got a food system problem. in addition to being racist food system,
Mm-hmm.
it's unjust in every corridor that you can think of, but more intensely, the inequality of it exists within the original people who actually fed everybody. Now we're relying on the food system. We don't even know if it's food anymore. And like Mama Savi said it earlier, I don't know if it's food. And now they're talking about accelerating a lot of these genetically modified, but also manufactured lab foods as a substitute for real food,
For actual food.
of actual food, addressing the climate change, right?
So
Addressing the climate change. Yeah. Please speak. One moment.
So when I think of food sovereignty and its demand, I think of the right to food and access to food. And I think the way in which the US food system is structured, it's all around access to food. And that when you raise up the right to food, which is situated in the food sovereignty movement, we're actually saying that our people have the right to healthy, locally produced food, and that building the infrastructure around access to food is disempowering because it doesn't fundamentally situate the control of food within local communities. And I really think
so in other words, you can increase access without increasing power or control.
That's right. That's right. And that's the whole framework of the US food system globally. And then when you really look, right now we're in an energy crisis. So I mean, it's an artificially created one. Then we have to take into account that agriculture has the largest footprint in climate change. And if we're really going to get to a place where we cut back on emission and ozone and climate warming activity, agriculture has to be trimmed back and become more localized, because it's a leading cause of superheating of the planet.
At least the industrial of agriculture.
Yeah, industrial agriculture, period.
99% of what we eat is industrial.
This industrial comes from industrial, but locally produced agriculture, non-industrial, is actually good for the environment. It is it's part of the natural ecosystem. All right, so three of the big
repairs. And it repairs the ecosystem.
Yes, which is what makes a healthy ecosystem, which makes it sustainable. If you're just burning it, then that's not repairing it. All right, so three of the concepts then of the alliance would be land justice, food economies, and food sovereignty. But what is the alliance itself? So the National Black Food Justice Alliance, of which both of you are on the board, what is that? What does it do? What are the members? What is the Food Alliance?
Well, I really see it as an alignment around those pillars that you just said, right? Land and food, self-determination, environment, around those pillars. And so what it is groups have come together to push that agenda within our communities, to lay the platform really for communities to work together on those platforms. And driving that is the very act of doing all of those things becomes the act of self-determination, because you can't get to a place where you can realign our local economy to meet the needs of our community until you get to a place where there's a very high consciousness of what it means to be engaged as a community in processes.
That was from the beginning.
Yes.
The beginning of alignment of people who had those pillars of commitment over almost 7 years of formation.
That's right.
It didn't happen overnight. This was done over 7 years. When I look back at the first time we met and all the conversations of formulating that, there was all these diverse organizations that was Black-led, basically.
That's right.
And made a commitment to address those fundamental issues that we experienced as a group of people. So in the face of what we're experiencing right now, we talked about this 7 years ago. We talked about collapsing food systems, collapsing energy systems, the housing and also the psychology of our community and the impact it would have. And actually, we were actually sort of formulated around these elements: food, energy, land, building, housing, environment, revolutionary education, transformative education around our issues and a relationship to those elements in our life, empowering our people for them to acknowledge and see the fact that they do have the power and decision-making process to make change in those domains. That was like a fundamental alignment that everybody had. We have power. We can change our food system.
So
That's
the
right.
alignment
We didn't start from a deficit.
didn't start from
We didn't start like we had no power.
So the when you're talking about the alignment of organizations that make up the alliance, are these organizations nonprofits? Are they you're talking a lot about growing food? Are these farmers? Who is the alliance? What's the membership like?
You have nonprofits, you have grassroots led, you also have within associate members. At the fulcrum, though, is the need to protect and provide infrastructural support of historic Black land owning institutions and cooperatives that have preserved Black land ownership and land rights, and provide the wherewithal so that within that space we can build the infrastructure out and protect land of Black and BIPOC. But clearly it is situated within the Black liberatory space, but we acknowledge the rights of Indigenous people within the land rights space.
We started, this is more to me like right now, a formal conversation, structural. We started with people. Some was farmers, some didn't have organization. I mean, some represented organization. It was just people in the streets. We just started with people. I mean, now I guess we can have a formal conversation of the organizational structure kind of thing. But it was a movement. It was fire. It was passion. It was a movement. And the beauty of it was, be honest, it was powerful women that generated this movement.
That's right.
And as powerful women. And there wasn't an organization. It wasn't an organization. It was people. And it emerged out of a conversation that was had. And people saw the value of that. And then we just said we need to create a national organization addressing those issues for us here in America and beyond.
So this conversation happens among these different groups, these different organizations, and now, Baba Fred, you are, of course, the chair of the National Black Food Justice Alliance, but that's your national group. Locally, in Illinois, you are with the Black Oak Center. What is the Black Oak Center? Where are you located, and what is it that you do?
Black Oak Center, really, when I think about it, it's a micro reflection of the national, right?
Yes.
In fact, maybe some of the conversation emerged out of the Black Oak Center with Dara. Yeah. She's the only daughter I have, and we was having these conversations.
Dara Cooper, you mean the founder of the Alliance?
About energy, food, housing, impact it's going to have with us over time, and how we need to be able to support our people and being powerful as we go through these climate shifting changes, energy crisis, and that. So Black Oaks was actually created to address the issues that we're talking about, which is kind of reflected in the national platform, Black Food Justice. The Black Oak Center was created. Actually, the full name was Black Oak Center for Sustainable Renewable Living for a Post-Carbon World. A long name, but it was. Yeah. We're in a post-carbon era right now. We're in an era with resources, heat, in every domain that we can think of: water, minerals, energy, raw resources. All those things are reaching a point of what they call post-carbon. And the challenges that we would have as communities, since we're so far at the end of the supply chain, we might not get much of it. Like now, if there's a breakdown in the supply chain, the last community to get anything would be the community that we're from. So like with Katrina, we were the last one, so Black Oak Center was designed specifically around energy conservation, energy resources and constraints in our community, and how we need to teach ourselves how to live through it, how to re-educate ourselves in energy, food, agriculture, and what we call resiliency, which I think we talk about it all the time at the Alliance. What's the resilient mind that we need to have in order to be more resilient and resilient as we go through these great shifts and stay healthy? So we do that here in Illinois. We start here in Illinois, but we got classes. We teach permaculture. I'm a certified permaculture educator. We teach permaculture and regenerative agriculture, but we also do a lot on energy.
Rural or suburban? How far are you away from like Chicago?
We were in both locations. We started in Chicago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't hold Chicago as separate from the rural. It's a prairie urban platform because the rural is not separate from the city. What happens in the rural, what happens in the city affects all of us. So we're 60 miles south of Chicago, the Echo campus is. But the Healthy Food Hub, we lived in Chicago for 15 years before we even moved on the land.
Is part of the work you do, of course, which you've mentioned, is co-ops. You actually do farming and teach farming, and you have a Healthy Food Hub, which I think is sort of something like an ongoing farmers market. Is that right? Is that accurate?
Yes, we call it a reverse CSA.
A reverse CSA. Yeah.
We call it reverse. So it's more diversity in the food. In addition to that, we started teaching farming out of the CSA.
Mm-hmm. So what I find is an interesting shift and an interesting intersection is that you're doing all of these food-related things. You're teaching people how to farm. You're making food available through the food hub, and you're talking about farming and the importance of land and et cetera. But yet, not that long ago, it seemed like the organization made a big shift where the Black Oak Center started to work on a campaign that was more external. So most of the work you do, it seems like, is how do we get our community to learn more about this aspect of their own history, this aspect of their own of importance of food sovereignty. But then you made some sort of a shift at some point, it seems, where you took on the NICOR pipeline. Can you talk a little bit about what the pipeline is and what your campaign around the NICOR pipeline is?
How could we not become more activists when the core relationship with the Alliance is with activists? So at my age, I'm become more of an activist, right? I got all these great young people around.
It's never too late.
We want to fight. Okay, so okay, let's fight.
All right.
So we're fighting. Okay, they want to fight. I'm 71, right? And they said we want to fight. I'm old revolutionary. We want to fight. So we're fighting because of the network of young activists that we met and related with through the Alliance. It's around the issue of energy, the inequality, the apartheid, the redlining of energy, and the powerlessness that we've experienced as a community here in determining our own energy future. We think we're intelligent enough to decide our own energy future. We don't think NICOR or the fossil fuel industry should be determining our long-term future around energy. It's not healthy, first of all. That's a justice issue. So what we've been fighting here is because the NICOR and the politicians, our political leaders, gave us no choice in the decision-making process of our energy future. And I'm very grateful for the Alliance because of the activists. We want to fight, Baba. Attitude. Locally, we sort of been taking the hits without no sense of fighting. It was out of the relationship with the Alliance that we want to fight. So we've been fighting. As an elder, I'm learning how to fight in ways that I forgot in the 60s and 70s. So we're fighting the pipeline. We haven't won that battle, but what we're fighting is the injustice of us being able to make a decision as a community of where we want to go. We want healthy energy system, not the old system that's contaminating the white farmers just up the road, killing the animals, pipeline bleeding into the water system. We drink our water here, not like other places. We actually drink the water from our land. So why would we not want to fight when somebody's going to run a pipeline that can contaminate your water supply?
So if the pipeline leaks, it would be leaking into your, and not leaking and then getting cleaned up at the big water plant downtown. It will be leaking directly into your water, right?
It's leaking into our aquifer and into the soil. We're an agriculture community. We need to grow healthy food. We're 60 miles south of Chicago. We're the oldest agriculture community outside of the Mason-Dixon. That's black, and indigenous. We got the largest land base. We are 52 square miles of land, just 2 miles smaller than the city of Chicago. We used to feed Ohio, blacks through the migration. We fed a lot of communities. There's nothing else to do but to fight. Now, it's only 60 people that's going to use this pipeline. And we're asking, what is the real story behind the pipe? It can't be serving 60 households that one person owns, which is the mayor. Our mayor owns those 60 households. And the rest of the landowners are not excited about running a pipeline through their land. Who wants it? And plus, the transition into a renewable industry, renewable future, is the acceptance of this system is going to allow us not have access to the future. That's a justice issue to me. We always are left out as Black folks in any future scenario. And if you notice, this is only happening predominantly in the Black communities or across the country, indigenous communities. That white communities don't want the pipeline. They're switching to renewable energies. The white farmers around Pembroke, all of them are rushing to have solar farms on their land, on their farmlands, which is an economic industry. I just went to Kankakee the other day. They even have them in the city of Kankakee on some white-owned land. But they tell us here in Pembroke that we can't have solar.
And that you have to have.
We got to have pipelines. So, yeah, you got to have the gas line, But everybody around us is rushing to make revenue from selling power. That's where the sovereignty comes in, right? We want to be as sovereign as any other group.
What's your actual source of energy? You're not saying you don't want energy. You're saying you want to decide that you don't want some people bringing it in. And this is happening 60 miles south of Chicago, right? So roughly an hour drive away from Chicago. And this is a longtime Black farming community outside of Chicago. And I know there's been over the years, certainly right after World War II, but even before that, even before and after World War I, there's been a migration of Black people, a heavy migration from the South to big cities in the North. I am in Washington, D.C., and I know there's a tremendous number of families here who migrated from North Carolina. And you hear the horror stories from some of those families about how they didn't migrate by choice. They didn't come here to go to Howard University. They came because they were escaping racist lynch mob, and their grandparent or great grandparent actually lost the land they were on. And you hear the stories, but you're not always able to connect it to a specific case. But we know that happens, right? The Black farmers and people who are not.
It happened to my family. Emmett Till was my cousin.
Emmett Till was your cousin.
I was born in Philip, Mississippi. His body floated by the place that I was born in. I didn't realize until later why my parents fled at Philip, Mississippi. He's a right. My mother's a right. He was coming to visit his grandfather, who was my great uncle. And after that event, most of my family left the area. They all knew the people that killed them, right? So the migration from the South, and the interesting thing about it, a lot of us bought land here in Pembroke on our way to Chicago. They bought 5 acres. They bought land here on the way to Chicago. They sold the farm, fled the South, came to the city. My dad, I was born on a 160-acre farm in Mississippi. My mother and them sold it, came to Memphis, and after Emmett Till, everybody left because everybody knew we were family. That was my family. He's family.
So
and
you knew that
killed
him on the line.
Yeah.
Danger. So we have all these families who are losing their land, lose their property. That has happened historically. My general sense is that it's probably still happening today. So Mama Savi, you are in North Carolina. What is the land loss prevention project that you're a part of? To give some context to Black land loss in the United States, several sources identify or point out that at the beginning of the 20th century, there were roughly 14 million acres of Black-owned land. At the end of the 20th century, there are roughly 4.5 million acres remaining of Black-owned land. That's over $326 billion worth of land that has evaporated or left the Black community. This is Black land loss.
So the Land Loss Prevention Project was started by the North Carolina Association of Black Lawyers back in 1983. And a group of lawyers, and most of them connected with North Carolina Central University School of Law, and North Carolina Central at that time and still today was the Opportunity Law School that would educate African Americans who were desiring to be part of the legal profession. And so a group of these lawyers, including the Association of Black Lawyers, got together and began to look at the lead cause of land loss within the 1980s.
The air loss, as you would call it, people who lose properties, or families actually lose properties because they're heirs and somehow it's not properly passed down. Is that what's happening? It's not properly passed down because of, well, what's the reasons why it's not properly passed down?
Well, it goes historically back to the classic period of Black land ownership, right? 50 years after slavery, with close to 15 to 16 million acres of land owned by Black farmers, and a little bit more, in terms of acreages within families. And so when you look at all the market dynamics and a racialized system that basically organized itself around stripping Black folk from land, so today we have close to about 4.5 million acres. Some say 7. We don't.
And that's a Black-owned farmland?
Farmland, right.
Mm-hmm.
And like about 7 million totally in terms of Black land ownership, which includes heirs property within families. And the heirs property situation, basically, Black folk could not trust legal processes. And a legal process that would avoid land being vulnerable would be to have a will. And it's passed through generation to generation through a will. But that was not to be had because, and rightfully so, the ancestors knew that the legal system was organized against our best interests, and to entertain a lawyer back in the day could be setting yourself up to lose your land. And that did happen in many instances. And then it then leaves this vulnerability of heirs property, which is a creature of state law. So when you don't have a will, then the land is collectively owned within a lineage of people. And some of us.
So it would be like my cousins and brothers and nephews, right? And then that problem, so basically it will go from one person or a couple, it would go down to 7 or 8 people who would then own it collectively. Right. And then so who's in charge of it, who gets to live there, those all become and then
it can become several hundred people.
That's right. When all of those folks pass, then each of their heirs also get a stake in it.
Right.
Yeah, which is all kinds of unusual problems. And so a big business then could come in and scoop that place up because there's no clear contact.
Yes, I think it becomes a victim in many regards to speculation, which is one of the platform of the Alliance, is to, under the Black Land and Power, is to shift land away from the speculative market and be able to have controls that are determined by the community in terms of holding the land, either in a land trust, a family trust, provide the technical assistance that they need to keep the land going. I mean, look at Katrina, right? Part of the problems for African Americans after Katrina is that basically New Orleans was a very large and complex Black family with multi-generational ownership of land and homes. And so no one really could provide clean title. That was a demand of the law at B as to how to get access to resources to return. So they had to do a work around that and get agreements from family. But by that time, the frustration had settled in and the need to move on, that you then create a diaspora of folk from New Orleans, and it becomes like a second wave of migration out from Louisiana of Black people. So that's why we need to have protective laws around and structures that would help families to protect their land ownership. And the Alliance to the Black Land and Power Collective is really doing that, helping us to get the tools together and provide the technical assistance and the resources needed to stabilize Black land ownership.
That's a big problem here. I mean, that's what she just described is the most frightening thing that our community here in Pembroke is going through.
Out of heirs property.
The heirs property, and then there's some strange thing because of the pipeline. Mm-hmm. Because of the pipeline coming in, the real estate community is emerged into here like never before. Real estate firms, the pricing of the land has went up to sometime $13,000, $14,000 an acre. We don't know what's really going. We think we're going to be eminent domain because they wrote that in the bill with the pipeline that they can eminent domain whatever they want to do. It's a old fear, like she was sharing, that we've known. The ancestors knew this, and it's almost like it's here. And they got big stories. That's why we're fighting. That they're saying they're going to convert Pembroke to the Dubai, which of course Dubai is a place we couldn't afford to live in, and it's been helped by with the CDC and some other organizations that are it's been held by the government and also the conservation community. I guess if this was a Dubai place, it wouldn't be farming. It would be a place where the wealthy can come and, ride their bikes and watch animals and things like that. But we would be gone. Maybe that's why the Field Museum, we're saying why the Field Museum is because we're going to be extinct and they know it. So they're here doing what they're doing. And what she just shared is we're so terrified here because we don't know. It's in a relationship with the Alliance with the technical support we hope it will be to help us maintain this community. Because right now, this place is threatened by the government, the oil company, and the real estate industry, the developers. Mm. They have a plan, and we don't know what it is, but from what she's saying, and the statement you made, brother, was, oh, maybe that's what we're prepped to be taken out here.
I think it's interesting that you're talking about this in terms of collective ownership and land trust as opposed to individual ownership. So is the position of the Alliance that then one of our ways or the way out of this is to collective control or ownership over land as opposed to individually owned Black farms or individually owned Black homes?
And I would say yes, the collective ownership, but for those who continue to own land individually is to help them with the legal infrastructure to protect the land so that it becomes an asset within their family that is enduring and won't be a subject of heirs property. So we're doing both with structures.
All right. So what's next for the Alliance? So now you have this group of, and this is seems to be a very diverse alliance in terms of its interests. You have a lot of farming. You also have efforts to stop gentrification. You have efforts to stop pipelines. You have efforts to increase the availability of food. And this is a growing alliance. What's next for the alliance? What's on the map for the rest of 2022? What can we expect to see from you in 2023?
To see more self-determined economies standing up within our communities, the co-ops, the community-supported agriculture mechanism, and just really building the co-ownership so that communities can also, that our farming communities can add value and look at securing income in that local community so it's self-determined by them. Then there is to build the infrastructure of protecting land and acquiring land that is then collectively held, and also to build out the land-based resources. So land-based organizations are given, or our resources are made available to continue these Black-owned spaces, which have land, significant amount of land. So we're also looking to build infrastructure around agriculture to the extent that we can impact how we grow food, and that the food that we grow is beneficial to our communities. So we're looking at agroecological principles and how to organize that institutionally and build the base for that. We're also making linkages to other land liberatory space internationally and recognizing the need to look further afield, because what happens abroad can happen here. We recognize the richness of countries in the South and their position on land and protecting indigenous land as enriching our dialogue. And then the big thrust is to protect Black land ownership and get the resources we need. And some of that must be resources from the government that is controlled by our communities. We want to see not land access, we want to see land being returned to African American farm families to repair the last 100 years of stolen legacy in land from our farming communities.
Wow.
So we see that as part of the policy shift that we want to see, and our work with other groups around land rights, young farmers, Native American farm organizations. Writ large, we are seeing a linkages and a common struggle around getting land for our people and protecting land that we already have, and be able to hold down land where we can basically come together to repair from all the ills that's out there and to have regeneration of our body, mind, and spirit.
A little more shorter. We're gonna do more of what we do. We're gonna do more of what we do, but in a way that's gonna be.
If it's a good trick, there's no need to teach new ones, right?
It is new because we're learning as we travel. So, but we're gonna deepen in a specific, measurable way to measure the improvable impact that the Alliance has. And in the process of doing that, we feel that we'll be able to create a template that can be shared and replicated in our communities, no matter where we're at. How do we regenerate our communities? How do we solve the issue of land? How do we solve the issue of our healthy relationship to land in a format that's replicatable and that can be practiced with simplicity at the level of community? I mean, that's a real critical element that we're holding, how we can replicate these principles in a measurable way and create the template that can be shared and replicated no matter where people are. And I got the other way, we can do the top-down approach, but we're looking at how we do the bottom-up design that people can apply and practice at the level of resources that they have in a format that we can measure. So it's like the feedback would be to measure of the effectiveness of the programs that we're delivering to the community. And in the result of doing that, we can be more self-sustaining in that. I think the long-term goal is sustainability. We can be self-sustaining. We've been fortunate in a way, but we're going to be able to deepen the material improvement of the people that we're working with in the community. So that's more of the same. We're doing it now. We can measure it even here in Pembroke. So we're trying to document that measure and come out with manners of we can approach and integrate these principles more so wherever we're at.
You talked a little bit about, both of you did, about how the importance of Black women starting this organization. So you started out with Dara Cooper as your executive director, and I guess you're only getting better with time, because instead of having one Black woman as a executive director, you now have two Black women as co-directors.
Yes, absolutely.
Cicely Garrett and Jasmine Cliff.
Yeah.
So you're getting better with time. You're getting better. By next time, maybe this next time we talk, you'll have 4 or maybe 8 Black women as executive directors.
Yeah.
If someone,
it really is not the multiplicity. It's just our deep commitment to deep democracy within our movement, and really a division of labor that comes together for the good of the organization. They both are brilliant and have talents that are more individuated, but work together on behalf of the Alliance. So it was a brilliant stroke. That
it was.
Yeah.
And if folks want to get more information about the Alliance or even join it, how would they do that?
Go to our website,
which is blackfoodjustice.org, right?
Absolutely.
And from there, they could get emails or phone numbers, or even fill out a form or something like that.
They can apply to join, and they'll be vetted, their groups, and we welcome the interest in the Alliance, because we really want to grow this movement across the United States. A lot of membership right now is situated in the South, but we really want to grow membership in the Midwest and further afield. We want a national movement. Historically, yes, because it's grounded in Black national self-determined movement. But we also literally mean we want a national movement.
All right. Well, Baba Fred Carter from the Black Oaks Center for Sustainable Renewable Living, and Mama Savi Horne from the Land Loss Prevention Project out in Durham, North Carolina. Thank you both so much for joining us here on The Next World.
And thank you for having us. We appreciate the richness.
Thank you for the window of sharing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, wonderful sharing. Thank you.
Okay, that's our show. Thank you for listening to The Next World. I'm Max Rameau. You can find out more about my work at pacapower.org. That's PACA power.org. You can read more in depth on many of the issues we talked about today on the Partners for Dignity and Rights website, dignityandrights.org. That's dignityandrights.org. We'll be back with another episode of The Next World soon. Until then, please tell your friends about us and help us spread the word about this podcast. Goodbye for now, and remember, organize, organize, organize.